In tonight's headlines, the plan to build public housing on part of the Fanling Golf Course could be shelved for now as public opinion shifts towards retaining the course for sports and conservation purposes. 6 months on, there is no end and winner in sight as the conflict in Gaza rages on. And Max Verstappen and Red Bull are back in business with victory in the Japanese Grand Prix.
Yes, that was
The Town Planning Board's decision in rezoning part of the 32-hectare Fanling Golf Course returned by the Hong Kong Golf Club from residential to undetermined last October has halted the government's plan in building public housing on the site. Hongyi Chairman Kenneth Lau said many people who used to support or held a neutral stance towards the administration's decision in taking back the site for public housing have changed their thoughts. He pointed out that with only 2 18-hole courses and 10 holes remaining, it would be unlikely for the city to stage more larger-scale tournaments. I heard that the course could not host 3 major events this year, the rural leader revealed. Lau emphasized that golf course is a crucial recreational facility in promoting the sport, especially when the city lacks related facilities. Even though Hong Kong has indoor driving ranges, he said they could not replace the golf course. The Fanling site is best served for recreational, sports, and conservation purposes, and its aim should be maintained once the government is able to find sites to tackle housing problem, Lau added. Meanwhile, the rural chief also took to the airwaves this morning to support the government's plan in developing the periphery of country parks as well as remote villages. Lau believes it would not cause any impacts to the environment. He also sided with the authorities' decision in prioritizing the northern metropolis and postponing the Khao Yi Chau Artificial Islands project that was originally scheduled to start next year. It might not be appropriate to undertake the 2 infrastructure projects simultaneously due to considerations such as cost, he added. Janice Low, Cable News. It has been a week since the government kicked off the trial run for the municipal solid waste charging scheme before it comes into effect on August 1st. The soft launch involved 14 spots, including government buildings, residential buildings, care homes and shopping malls. Speaking on a television program, Environment and Ecology Secretary Tse Jin-wan revealed that although 9 in every 10 participants were willing to take the designated bags, the usage rate for waste disposal was low, only ranges from 20 to 50%. Many expressed that the bags are too short and the design makes it difficult to tie them securely, he said. Tse reiterated that the authorities would review the trial in May and June before deciding whether the plan will be expanded to across Hong Kong as planned. The death toll following a 7.2 magnitude quake in the east coast of Taiwan near Hualien County has risen to at least 13. Search is still underway for 6 people. But there was good news at the Silks Place Hotel in Taroko. All the more than 300 visitors stranded at the premises have been evacuated to safety. The hotel announced on social media that it would be temporarily closed for the month to allow its workers to take a break after the tremor. Even though traffic at the Qingshui Bridge and Suhua Highway has reopened, services are limited. Vehicles could only pass the bridge at 3 time slots each day until the end of this month in a bid to ensure road safety. Rescue efforts could be hampered in the coming days as the island is expecting rainy weather, which could possibly trigger another round of landslides. Janice Low, Cable News.
Six months into the Israel-Hamas conflict, a new round of mediated ceasefire talks are expected to take place in the Egyptian capital Cairo today. A World Health Organization-led multi-agency mission finally gained access to the Al-Shifa hospital, once the largest medical facility in Gaza. Officials described it as an empty shell after weeks of fighting between Israel and Hamas forces. Footage showed extensive damage to the whole structure, and except for the exterior walls, the whole interior is blown apart. Restoring even minimal functionality in the short term is absolutely impossible. It is unclear how many people died in the attack on the hospital, but the WHO team spotted at least 5 bodies lying around, and just like most places in the Gaza Strip, there could be many more buried underneath the rubble.
The dead bodies are still underneath us. We can smell the death out while we're standing here.
Israeli claimed Hamas was using a hospital as a control center. As Israeli forces continued their ground offensive in the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis, they found the body of 47-year-old Elad Gaza, which was taken hostage by Hamas in a raid on southern Israel 6 months ago. His mother was also taken, but was released along with more than 100 other hostages last November. Israeli forces said Gaza was tortured and murdered in captivity. More than 100 hostages are still in Hamas captivity, somewhere in the Gaza Strip, with many feared dead. Families and loved ones led a silent protest in Israel demanding their release. While thousands made their voices heard as they marched through the streets of Tel Aviv, calling for an immediate end to hostilities and bring the hostages back home. As the conflict rages on despite a United Nations Security Council resolution for an immediate ceasefire, more than 33,000 Palestinians have perished in Israeli attacks so far. Beslan, Cable News.
Nicaragua has become the second country in as many days to cut off diplomatic ties with Ecuador. The Central American country followed Mexico, which broke off ties with Ecuador earlier after police stormed the Mexican embassy in Quito and arrested former Ecuadorian Vice President Jorge Glass, who had sought asylum there. People in Mexico City protested outside the Ecuadorian embassy, calling the raid an outrage against international law. The United Nations voiced similar concerns as embassies are generally considered sovereign territory.
La decisión del presidente de la República.
Ecuadorian Foreign Minister Gabriela Sommerfeld said the government complied with the arrest warrant for Glass issued by the National Court of Justice. Glass had sought political asylum at the Mexican embassy since last December after being indicted on corruption charges.